Hello beautiful people, you're welcome to my channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. So today I'll be showing you how to make off shoulder illusion neckline top. Okay, so I say a very big welcome to you all. Thank you for returning back. If you're an old subscriber and if you're new to this channel, you're welcome. Join this wonderful family by subscribing. It is absolutely free. It is for you to be part of this family and also get notified whenever I upload a new video. So subscribe and turn on the bell beside it, okay, so that you won't miss out on anything. So without wasting so much time, we'll move straight to the lesson of the day. So like I said, we'll be making off shoulder illusion neckline top. So we'll start by drafting it on the paper, and on this paper I have noted down the vertical measurements just in form of our basic bodice. So this is the bust point from the shoulder to the bust point. This is the line. Then to the under bust, directly under the bust, we have it here. This is the under bust point, and this is the waistline. So on this waistline I have included allowance because this is going to be a gown. So this is the top part. So I included allowance for joining it to the top part. I included 2 inches allowance, but what I need is 1 inch. So the extra 1 inch I added is just to be on the safe side. After joining, if they are not aligned, you can have a space to trim out or make adjustments because you'll be joining curves. Okay, so having done that, now the next thing to do is to place our dart. So to place our dart, you need to mark the bust pan. So in this case, the bust pan is 9 inches. So from one nipple to the other is 9 inches. Because we are working on fold, we'll divide that by 2. So that will be 4.5. But instead of marking 4.5, I would mark 5 inches. That is to say, I will add half inch to that because we'll be cutting out the dart and we'll be joining. So you need a half inch for joining it. Okay. So instead of marking 4.5, I would mark 5 inches starting from the bust point. So I mark 5 inches all the way down. So by the time you have marked, you connect. Okay, so I've done videos on off shoulder blouse on this channel. I'll be leaving the link in the description box in case you haven't watched those videos. They will be helpful. Okay, so by the time you have done this, now we'll be marking at the under bust. At this side, I'll take 2 inches. At this side, I'll take 1 inch because I'm working for someone with big bust. Okay, is the person on the big side. So the bust circumference is 42 and the under bust circumference is 36. So that is 6 inches difference. Okay, so that is above average. But if you're working for someone with smaller bust, you take 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on this side. So I don't have the cup becoming so big. So 2 inches is what I'm using and 1 inch on this side. Okay, so you come here, you also mark the 2 inches and 1 inch on this side. Then you connect. So you connect like so. So when you have done this now, you come to the bust point. You step down by 1 inch. So this is okay for everybody. So we want to eliminate sharp or pointy edge at the bust. So you step down by 1 inch and you connect. You just connect with a curve like so. Then at this side, you can just make it straight. It doesn't have to be curvy. So this is what we have. Now, having done this, you now take the neckline for your off shoulder because we'll be taking away the shoulder. Okay, this is off shoulder. So how low do you want the neckline to be? Though it will have an illusion, it's an illusion neckline. We'll be creating that later, but for now you determine how low you want it from the shoulder. So in this case, I'll be making use of 5 inches. Okay, so it depends on how low you want it or how high. For this client, I'll be making use of 5 inches. So I'm marking 5 inches from the top here. This is the actual let's say the high shoulder, while this side is the slope. So you still need to take from here. So I mark 5 inches so that I can draw my line. So just to show that this is the neckline for our off shoulder. You can see we have minus the shoulder. So this is our off shoulder now. I haven't created the armhole. So to create the armhole for this illusion neckline, at this part where you have marked your neckline depth, come in by 1 inch. So this 1 inch is okay for everybody. Come in by 1 inch at this armhole depth area. Okay, so by the time you have come in by 1 inch, come to the chest line. So you know that where your armhole length or the armhole depth stopped is your chest line or upper bust line, and that is where we place our bust circumference to get our armhole. So here you place your bust circumference divide by 4. So in this case it is 10.5. So I would mark it so that I can create the armhole. So this is 10.5. So now you connect it from this point to that point. You just make an armhole. So this is not the final armhole, but just create the armhole like so. Okay. So if you're just making ordinary off shoulder, you already have it. This is it. All you need to do is now to create the kind of neckline you want. But now this is our armhole for our off shoulder. So when you have done this, just measure from this neckline, come down by 1 inch. Okay, just step down by 1 inch. It is okay for everybody. Connect it to the bust point. Just go this way to the bust point. When you have done this, at the bust point now, step up by 1 inch again, just like you did here. Here we step down by 1 inch, while here you step up by 1 inch. Okay, so you mark it. When you have marked it, now at this line, measure 1 inch from the line here. Okay, and connect it to this point. So just take it step by step. Okay, connect it and you have it there. So we have created our cup for that is the bustier. Now I want to eliminate this pointy edge. What I'll do is connect from this point to this point. Just blend it. Okay, just a way of blending it out so I don't have sharp edge there. So I have blended it out. Okay, and you can see it is now beautiful and smooth. So when you have done this, now from this neckline also connect to this point. Just connect it to that 1 inch step up like so, and you have it. Now looking at this, you know we have 1 inch here. That is from this point to this point is 1 inch. From this point to this point is 1 inch. That is to say this dart is 2 inches. Okay, now we're going to replace this 2 inches dart here, because by the time you cut out this dart and you decide to join this part to this part, this side will be longer than this side, so you have to replace the 2 inches. So step up by 2 inches from here. Just make sure you just place it well. You come up by 2 inches. Okay, so you can just use your curve to connect it like so. Okay, so by the time you have done this, now at this part too we'll be adding the 2 inches, because when you cut it, it will be short at this side. So also add the 2 inches here as well. So when you have done this, we'll now create the new armhole connecting from this point to this point. And because this is off shoulder blouse, you would not make it too deep. Okay, it shouldn't be too deep, but not straight, just a little bit curvy, so that by the time you join your armhole sleeve, that is by the time you join your off shoulder sleeve, everything would stay well. Okay, so you just curve it a little bit. When you have done this, now you also come to this side. Okay, now we want to create our illusion neckline. So before you do that, you would come to your bust point, step up. It depends on how you want it. Okay, normally it can be at the same length with the upper bust, or you can take like 2 inches from your bust point, either 2 inches or 2.5, depending on how you want it, depending on how covered you want it to be. So in this case, I would use 2 inches. Okay, I think 2 inches is okay. So I would mark at 2 inches. Okay, now by the time you cut it out, when you want to join it, you add allowance. So by the time I have after stepping up by 2 inches from the bust point, you determine how wide you want that part to be. Okay, determine how wide. It can be 3 inches from one bust side, from one side to the other. So for me, I like 3 inches. 3 inches is okay. So since it's on fold, I'll take 1.5. So I would mark 1.5. Then by the time you cut it out, you have to add allowance for joining it back to this side, okay? So I've marked 1.5. This is it. By the time you have marked it, you now connect from this point. You connect from this point, you cut across to where you want it to stop. So at the under bust, I want it to get a little bit to the waist, okay? So like I said, I took 2 inches for allowance. So this is actually where I have the waist, okay? So I'll step up from the waist by 2 inches. So in other words, from the under bust, it can also be 2 inches from that is from the under bust, okay? So that is where I want it to stop. Now I would connect from this point. It will touch this point and come this way. So I hope you remember this. Okay, this will step up by 2 inches from the bust point. Then how wide you want it to be? I said I want it to be 3 inches, so I marked 1.5. Okay, so I would use my chalk to connect so that I can have a beautiful curve before using my marker. So you just want to have a nice curve there. Okay, so you just connect it to where you want it to be, like so. So now I can use my marker to make it clear to you. So just the way you want it to be, should cut across this point, then go to where, so this is it, okay? So you have that V here. So it goes this way. So here it is. Having done this now, the next thing is to place our horizontal measurement. So you can still mark this one to indicate that you are cutting this out, okay? So by the time you cut out this one, you also cut out this, because this is where we have the net, the skin net, okay? So but in this case I'll be using white net because it's a wedding gown that I am making. Now you can smoothen out this side. So I have double lines there, so let me just smoothen it out so that when I cut it, I'll just have that V, okay? So this is it. Now it's time to place the horizontal measurement. At this side, we already have the bust measurement. We have placed the bust measurement and the allowance for this dart, but not the seam allowance yet, okay? So let me extend the line because I'll be adding the seam allowance. So I'll be using 2 inches seam allowance so that at this point where I'll be joining. So I will use 2.5 because we'll be joining this side to this side, okay? So now at the under bust, I'll place the under bust circumference. That is under bust circumference divided by 4. That is 9 inches. So remember, you're taking it from this side. You mark your 9 inches. Replace the 3 inches dart. So whatever dart you use, you have to replace it. And I'll add 2.5 inches seam allowance. So let me add my 2.5 inches seam allowance at this point as well, so I don't forget. Okay, so this is it. Then at the waist circumference divided by 4 is 10 inches. Replace my 3 inches dart. And I'll add my 2.5 inches seam allowance. So 2.5 inches. I have it there. So now I would connect, okay? So all this 2.5 inches allowance, the allowance you need to join this part to this part is included there. The allowance you need to turn the lining is included there. So by the time you're done doing all this thing, you might have like 1 inch allowance left. So that's why it's good to take enough allowance so that by the time you have turned your lining, you have closed up your darts, you don't fall short of the fabric to stitch up the dress, so that it won't be too tight on the person, okay? So 2.5 inches is okay for me. Now, having done this, it's time to cut, okay? But before you cut, make sure everything is okay. Now, if you're going to make, like, if it is an illusion blouse with shoulder, this one will be your yoke, Okay, so this will be the yoke, then you just create your armhole, but this is off shoulder, so I'll make a separate video on illusion blouse or illusion neckline with shoulder or with yoke. So for now, this is our off shoulder. So you can see what we have here. So let me turn it this way. So this is it with the allowance, everything we need. So by the time I cut it out, I'll be adding allowance here. So let me just indicate it now. I'll be adding seam allowance. So by the time you cut it, this side, you have to place your net on fold. Okay, so you open it up. You need to add half-inch seam allowance here. So let me write 0.5. You add half-inch seam allowance on this side. You also add half-inch seam allowance on this side for joining this side to the net. Okay, so I will write it there. So now it's time to cut it out. So you can see what we have here. Okay, so this is our off shoulder with illusion neckline. So by the time we cut on fabric, like I said, you add half-inch. This will be on fold. So you cut half-inch for the net at this side. You add half-inch at this side of the net. You also add half-inch at this side of this one. Okay, so for this other one, the allowance have been added. So this is it for the front. Let me also show you how to cut the back, then we'll transfer on our fabric. Okay, so now to cut the back, I have done just what I did at the front. So this is the zipper allowance. Okay, this area is the zipper allowance. So this is zipper allowance, so that you know. So you have to take your 1-inch zipper allowance before placing every other thing. So this is the bust pan, and this is the neckline for the off shoulder. So since this is the back, we don't need bustier at the back. We don't need to create a cuff. So our dart will not be that bold. So for at this waistline, we'll take half-inch on both sides, just like the way we create our waist dart. Okay, so take half-inch on both sides at the waistline and connect it to the bust point. So just connect to the bust point like so. Okay, so by the time you have done this, now we will create the armhole at this part, because this is off shoulder and we don't want it to be directly at that armhole area, that is at the armpit area, because we'll be adding sleeve. So you come in by 1 inch, just like we did at the front. Come in by 1 inch, mark it, then you make your curve by placing your bust circumference divided by 4 here. Okay, so the bust circumference divided by 4, that is 10.5. So you place it and you create the armhole. Okay, so just slant it for now, just slant it for now like so, just connect it. Okay, so by the time you have done this now, so we want to create the princess dart, that is the princess dart for the back. So what you will do, since this is back, we are not creating cup, so no too much dart. What you do in the front, we step down by 1 inch, but here we'll take half. Okay, come down by half-inch and connect it to the bust point. So this works for everybody. Okay, so now at this side, you take half-inch. At this side, we already have half-inch. So you connect to the bust point. So we're not creating a bustier like I said. So this is the back. So just connect. We want to just have that nice fitting at the back. So that's why we're creating the dart. So now we'll replace this dart, because by the time you cut it out, it will be short up. So we are replacing 1 inch. So you go up by 1 inch. So just follow it where it is and you mark your 1 inch, connect it. Okay, so you do the same at this other side. Replace the 1 inch you're cutting off so that it won't be short. Then we'll create the new armhole, not too deep, okay, just slightly curved but not too deep. So this is the new armhole. Having done this now, we'll create the back neckline. So the back neckline, it depends on what you want. Normally we already have this. This is the line for our neckline, so you can go beyond it, okay, that you can go below it for the back. So depending on what you want, you can make a v-neck, you can make whatever neck you want and how deep you want it. So I would step down by, I'll take maybe 2.5, okay, because from the shoulder we have already stepped down by 5 inches, so that would help you know how deep you're going. So let me take 2 inches, so that let's say that all I have for the back depth is 7 inches, okay. So but at this point it will be the same with the front. It's only at the center back you can have different depth from the front, okay. So I would connect it, so it's going to be like a V at the back there. So this is it. Let me use my marker so that it will be clear. So it's going to be like a V. Okay, so mind you have to include the zipper allowance, okay. So this is the dart for the back, and smoothing this area because you don't want it sharp, okay. So just smoothing it like so. Now we place the horizontal measurements. So I hope this is clear. It's simple, the back is just simple. So we'll create the horizontal measurements. So at this point we have placed our bust circumference, and I will add 2.5 inches for seam allowance. So that is what I used at the front. Then the same goes for the bust, okay, the same measurement as the bust. So this is the under bust. We just added it for emphasis sake. We don't need it here because we are not drafting a bustier, but I'll still place the measurement, okay, so that we can shape our top. So the under bust circumference is 36 divided by 4, that is 9. So remember to measure from after the zipper allowance. So I hope that is what I did here. Yes, so measure from after the zipper allowance, okay. So this 9, we'll replace whatever dart you have here. I have ½ inches dart, so let me take that again. I have another point here, so I want to be clear. This 9, I replace the ½ inch dart. This is it, and I'll add my 2.5 inches seam allowance, okay. So here it is. Then at the waist circumference divided by 4 is 10 inches. It's 10. Replace my 1 inch dart and add my 2 inches, that is 2.5 inches seam allowance. And here it is. So I'll connect it now. So it goes this way. Sorry. So this is it, and like so. So whenever you have a shape like this, make sure you blend it. It shouldn't be that sharp. Just blend it when cutting, okay. So this is it for the back. So you go through your work before you cut. Make sure everything is in place, your zipper allowance, your darts are okay, then the neckline, okay, and every other thing before you go ahead to cut. You can even match the front neckline and the back. So you can even match the front armhole and the back armhole to be sure that everything aligns, okay. So you can see, so it's okay. By the time I sew the darts, I'll have everything matching up. So that is it. Now I can cut. So this is it for the back, as you can see, very easy, okay. And the front also, you have it aligning, okay. So for the length at the back, you still take the same length you use for the front. Then after stitching, you can match up and trim, okay. So this is it for the back and the front. So after stitching the allowance, everything will stay well. Now I'll go ahead and transfer this on my fabric. Okay, then for the sleeve, I like making the sleeve after I've stitched the after I've stitched the fabric, so that I'll measure the neckline, because the neckline is what I will be using to determine the sleeve. Okay, so I'll go ahead and cut on my fabric. I have transferred my pattern onto my fabric. So this is what I have. So for the center front, I added 1/2 inch, like I said, at this point where I'll be joining the net. Okay, so this is the net. I also added 1/2 inch at this side. Okay, so it will be joined this way, and I placed it on fold. So this is what I did. I made sure I had double net there. So I folded my net, okay, before folding it like so again, so it will be double. So this is what I have. This is it here. Okay, so that will be here. Now for this center front, I will open it up. I'll cut it open, both for the main fabric and the lining. For my main fabric, I ironed interfacing to it. Okay, so I'm using the same fabric for the lining and the main fabric, the same satin. So but I ironed interfacing to the main fabric. Now I would open it up at the center here. So just make sure they are aligned. Then you open it up. So I'll cut open. Okay, so I also opened this point and I added allowance, as you can see. I added allowance for joining it back. Okay, so we'll have it this way. We'll have it this way. This will come to this point. We'll stitch it. So by the time we stitched it, well, by the time we are done stitching this point, we'll close up these points using the allowance we added. Okay, so this is how it will come. So you can see this. So by the time we are done stitching this side, we'll close up this point. So opening it up would help you have very nice stitch. Okay, you won't have problem stitching this V side. So that's why you need to open it up to the waist point. So this is it, and then I'll open up this one as well. So I also show you how to cut the wording for padding. So this is the center front and the net. So for the side, I did the same thing. I cut out so this is the side, okay, the main fabric and the lining. Then we also have the back, the main fabric and the lining. So I'll go ahead and pad the front so that you see how to pad it using wording. Okay, so I'm using medium weight wording. This is medium weight. We have the hard, we have the soft, and the medium. So the medium is actually nice because it is not too hard and it's not too soft. Okay, to give a nice bust cup. So now to cut our wording, let me just arrange this. I'll put the lining aside. Put the lining aside and the net. So I want to show you how to pad it. Okay, sorry, I was giving an illustration. I didn't know that my camera was not on, so I just drew how I want the wording to be under the fabric. Okay, but let me just take it afresh. So this is my wording. So I'm using medium weight wording. Okay, so now I would place my fabric on it. So mark, either you notch or you mark your bust point and your under bust point. So I just marked mine, from your pattern you mark it, then you open up your wording. So on your wording you have the fusible side and the non-fusible side. So the fusible side is a bit shiny, so that is the part that sticks to the fabric, but sometimes they don't stick, but it doesn't matter. Just open it up to the fusible side. Now you take your pattern, you place it the wrong side facing the wording. Okay, and like so, how you would join it. Now, like I said, you can notch your under bust point and your bust point. So I have just marked mine. So I marked my under bust point because the wording will get like a little bit under the under bust point. Okay, so you just place it that way. So I've given several tutorials on how to pad on this channel, how to pad your bustier. So I'm just doing this again just because this is illusion neckline. Okay, so now the wording will just get rounded inside like this. So what I'll simply do is, from this bust point, because I don't want it to get to the armhole area, so you can step down by 2 inches from that point. Okay, step down by 2 inches and you mark on the wording. Then from here as well, you can step down by 2 inches. And another way is just to measure. If you want to have it equal, measure from the bust point upward. Okay, so it can be like 5.5 for me here. Then, so since I measured 5.5 there, I'll still measure 5.5 from this side. Okay, so take it this way. I'll measure 5.5, and this is where I have it. Okay, so I to go together. So now I would just mark it to that point. I'll mark it to that point. So I don't want the wording to also get to this point where I'll stitch. So I'll give like ½ inch space. Okay, so it will just go like this under here, like ½ inch space. And at this point as well, remember I'll be joining by ½ inch. So at this point, you can come in by 0.7 inches. Okay, so that you don't have it, you don't join it to the net. So just a rough sketch, and this is it. Place it again. So this one, I'd like it to just connect like so here. So to just go this way. Okay, so that is it for this side. This is how it's going to be. Okay, so remember I'm making this for a busty person, so it's looking big. Then for this side too, just mark. Just mark to that point. So this one too gets, it will not get to the armhole because you will not want to stitch it to the sleeve. So you can just come in a little bit like so, and it will go like this, like this. Don't get to the seam. Okay, just go like this. So you can decide to make it come like a cup. You just bring it this way. Okay, so this one will go this way, and you have it like so. So I'll go ahead and cut this out now. By the time I cut it out, I'll use it to cut the other one. This one too, you can just make it like cup as well, so that when you join it, it will just be beautiful. So I'll go ahead and cut it. So you can also use your bra cup, already made bra cup. So I'll make a video on how to fix your already made bra cup into your bustier. Okay. So have it here. So this is it. So you can place it back to notch the bust point. So remember I took two, that's from the bust point I went up by 5.5. Okay, so that this will guide you to know where you're placing it. So this is it, though I'm marking it slightly. So this is it. So by the time I have placed it like this, I'll know that this is the bust point on the wording. So I'll mark it. I'm marking the bust point. Same with this one. Just measure where you have your 5.5, and that is the starting of the wording. So I'll place it. So that will give me a guide on where I have the bust point, and I would mark it on the wording as well. So this is necessary so that when you're joining the wording to the main fabric, you place it correctly. Okay, so I'll go ahead and notch it, and I'll use this one to cut the other cup for the other side. So you know we are to have two of this, as in as it is like this. So with this now, I'll cut for the other side. So to cut for the other side, just place it like this, the fusible side facing the fusible side. Okay, and you cut. So this is, so now we'll place it on our fabric. Okay, so this one will go like this. This is the fusible side to go this way, while this one will go this way. So after stitching, you can still trim this area. Okay, you can still trim it. This one is going this way. And this one is going this way. So you see why you need to notch it. Okay, so this is how we would pad it. So now I'll go ahead and stitch. So just place it together and stitch. As usual, I like to pin before stitching. I like to pin before stitching. So whichever one that you find easy or you find faster, you can go ahead and do. But for me, I would pin it down, then I'll go ahead and stitch. So after holding it down with my pin like so, I'll go ahead and stitch it. Okay, so by the time I stitch it, you'll see everything. So I'll do same for this other side. I will stitch, then I'll show you how to join the net. Okay, so I have joined it, as you can see. Okay, then I notched and ironed it down. So this is it. Okay, so I notched and ironed it. So I also did same for the lining part. So the next thing now is to stitch the net, to join the net to it. Okay, so you can see how I folded the net. I doubled it, so I stitched this part to make it one piece. So remember we took half inch for stitching. Now I'll place it this way. I'll go ahead and stitch it by the half inch, okay? Then I'll also turn it to this side and stitch by the half inch. So I want to pin it to show you exactly what I will do, because I won't be able to move my camera to the sewing machine. So just stitch by the half inch. So let me pin it down to show you exactly what to do. So I've held it down with pin. So you go ahead and stitch. So after stitching this side now, I would flip it like so, and place this one too and stitch by the same half inch. Okay. So when you have stitched to this side, like you can see, you will now close up this opening here. Just place it together and stitch it, okay? So let me turn to the right side. So you just stitch it up. So you just try to do that neatly. Okay, so it's just that I'm holding this with pin. So by the time you just stitch, you would raise this one and you stitch up this side. Okay, so let me just hold it with pin as well. So this is it. So it's not looking smooth because I'm using pin to hold it, but by the time you stitch it, it would be very nice. Okay, so can you see this? So I'll go ahead and stitch. Okay, so I have stitched it and you can see what we have here. So the seam will have to go in with the lining. Okay, so by the time we join the lining, it will be very neat inside. So the seam is showing here because we have not joined the lining. So I'm just trying to push it in so I can have a clear view of what I'm saying here. Okay, so you can see this. Then at this lower part, I have joined it as well. So I'm just trying to hide this seam, okay, so it will look neat. So you can see what we have here. You can see the sharp V. Okay, so let me explain it again. By the time you take you place your net, you stitch this part up to where the end, up to where you have the net ending. Then you bring this other one, you start stitching this one from here. You stitch. By the time you get to where you have the net, you flip over this one, okay, and you continue stitching till you get to this point. Okay, so that is it. Now we would add the lining. So we have the lining here. This one is to go here and this one is for this side. So now let's take it one after the other, just like the way we stitch the main fabric. That's how we stitch the lining. So now we take the lining and we stitch. So I'll still stitch at that half inch, okay, but I'll go in a little bit so that I can use it to turn this part and everything will be neat. So let me pin it and show you what I mean. So because I can't take it to the sewing machine, I can't show you the sewing machine area. So you do the same thing like we did for the main fabric. So you can see how it is on this side now. So you can see I've used the lining to take in the rough edge. So by the time I've gotten to this point, I'll still bring this other one just like we did for the main fabric. Okay, so you join this one at this point, you stitch it to this point, then continue stitching the main fabric and the net together like that until you get to this point. Okay, so you're going to stitch it by that 1/2 inch, or you go in a little bit just to conceal this roughness or the seam. Okay, so let me do that, and then you understand it just like we have it here. So you can see this is the wrong side of it, the inside, and this is the front. Okay, so let me stitch. So I have stitched it, and you can see what we have here. Okay, this is the right side, and inside you can see what it looks like at the inside. Okay, so you can see the V very sharp. So this is how to actually achieve a very sharp V. You have to cut this part open, okay, so that by the time you stitch it, it will just stay well without having any problem or without having any issues at this point. So this is it. I forgot to tell you that you need to also stitch the neckline. Okay, so you stitch from the neckline like so. Okay, that is the lining. You're going to, by the time you join your lining, you stitch from the neckline. Okay, that is it. Just join it from the neckline. Now I just explained this part. So you just place your lining, you stitch from the neckline, and you go in just like I explained, and you have it there. Okay, this is just a way to achieve your off shoulder illusion neckline blouse, and you can see the V very sharp at this edge and looking beautiful too. So to achieve this, you need to cut this side open so that it will be very easy for you. Okay, and at the inside, this is what we have. Okay, so this is the inside, and you can see how neat and beautiful it is. So the next thing to do now is to place my hemming gum. So I'll place hemming gum at this inside and iron it. So I would place hemming gum inside here, and I'll iron it neatly so that it will lie flat inside here. Okay, so I'll use my hemming gum, and then I'll place it inside. So you can also top stitch. Okay, just move all the seam allowance to the lining part, and you top stitch. So this is the lining part. You just move all the seam allowance to the lining part, and you top stitch. Okay, so I also like using my hemming gum to do that. So I'll place the hemming gum here. Just place it inside like so. Okay, so that by the time you iron, it will just place everything down. So by the time you place your hemming gum, you press this side. Okay, and you iron it. So by the time you iron it, the hemming gum will hold it down. So let me do that. So you iron from inside. So just place the hemming gum inside. So you can do it bit by bit. Okay, you can just do it bit by bit. Then you close it, and you iron. So you can see it lying very flat here. Okay, so I just showed you that, but I will be doing that later on because I'll be adding sleeve, and the sleeve will be in seam. Okay, the sleeve will go in. So by the time I'm done tucking in what I want to tuck in, then I would go ahead and neatly iron the top so that everything will lie well. Okay, so for the back, it is very simple. You just join your back. This is the main fabric, and this is the lining part. So just stitch at the neckline, the zipper allowance. So when I join the sleeve, everything will be there. So I will put the sleeve to be in seam Okay, so thank you for watching, and I hope you like this video. Please give it a like, and don't forget to share it with your friends so you can see the difference between where I have ironed and where I have not ironed. So I just want to show you, if you can see this. Okay, so that is it, and I'll be making another video because this one is long already. I'll be making another video on the sleeve. Yeah, it will be strap sleeve. Okay, so I'll be making another video on that, and the lower part too. I'll be making a video to show you the lower part to be mermaid panel skirt. Okay, so mermaid panel skirt, and that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like this video. Give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you, and see you in my next video. Remain blessed.